directing the deployment, the areas for deployment, or the strategic deployment with our federal partners that have been named by the president for this purpose. The president is able to do this because of the language in the Home Rule Charter, which is pretty broad as it relates to the president's ability to declare a public safety emergency. We do not believe that we are experiencing a crime spike or are in an emergency status. In fact, MPD has been doing the job with community and all of their partners in government to drive down violent crime in the District of Columbia. We have, in fact, experienced a 26% decrease, and that's on top of the 35% decrease we saw in violent crime last year. Having said that, we never take our foot off the gas, and we're never satisfied with any level of crime, certainly violent crime, the use of guns, and homicide and robbery and carjacking in our city. We recognize, and we worked with all of you in 2023 when we did experience an unacceptable spike in violent crime. That's when I came out to ANC meetings. I met with school leaders. I met with members of the council. We moved an emergency piece of legislation that was followed by an omnibus bill authored by Councilmember Brooke Pinto. That bill allowed us to do what I think is one of the most significant things to drive down crime, and that is to be able to hold violent offenders who have been accused of a violent crime pre-trial. And since we've been able to do that, we have seen the number of shootings and homicides go down in our city. So now we are dealing with what we believe is the president's invocation of a part of the charter that he has the prerogative to invoke. And we are ensuring that our chief of police is the leader and is working with her counterparts that have been named by the president, specifically the director of the Drug Enforcement Agency and the Marshal's Service to ensure that any additional officers that we have, and we expect that could range in the hundreds on any given night, will be deployed in the way that helps us drive down violent crime. The president also issued an executive order that would deploy the National Guard in DC. And I know you've been following in the news, and you know that the DC Guard is in fact the president's guard. The mayor cannot launch the DC National Guard only by request to the Department of Defense. The president has indicated that he will use, or that will use the National Guard in non-law enforcement ways. And so we will continue to watch for that. Today, I requested and had a meeting with the Attorney General for the United States, Pamela Bondi, who the president has who has delegated his authority to in this matter. The executive order states clearly that the president may request MPD services from the mayor and directs the mayor to provide those MPD services. The executive order nor our law change our organizational structure in the district. Our structure in the district is that the agency, in this case MPD, reports through the deputy mayor and the city administrator to me, and the chief of police has a direct line to me as well. The Attorney General for the United States, Pamela Bondi, as the president's designee, is also my point of contact in working with the federal government. I am appointing Deputy Mayor Apia to be our policy lead with the federal partners, and Chief Pamela Smith is our operations lead in working with the federal government and federal forces that will be in the district. So with that, I want to pause and see if Lindsay and Kevin want to add anything, and then take your questions. Okay, any questions?
Yes, Mayor, we've got a couple of questions. The first I'll read, it's from Naomi. Mayor Bowser, can you speak to the rights, protections, and resources available to DC residents of all ages and how your office intends to communicate about those rights and resources to constituents in light of the recent changes of organizational structure?
Well, there have been, Naomi, no changes to organizational structure. How you communicate with DC government remains the same, including with the Metropolitan Police Department or with your contacts in the EOM. That all remains the same. I have asked my team to look at some of the questions that we're getting from community and put together a know your rights kind of one pager. And I will continue, we're going to continue to work on that to make it as fulsome as possible and post it online. Needless to say, and this is true today, as it was yesterday, as it was last week and the week before that, we expect all of our residents to act lawfully, and we expect the police to act lawfully. And that is how we will proceed in this space. So we're having various conversations with people who have influence in the community to help spread that word. And this is the first such meeting. We intend to have it with our violence interrupters as well as our school leaders. And we don't expect to be the only leaders of these conversations. This is really a time for a community to jump in. Don't wait for me to ask. Don't wait for me to tell you to do something. But this is a time for us all to jump in and make sure that our kids know the law, know their rights, and are safe.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to remind everyone who's on, we've got people who are dialed in. If you press 0 now, that will get you into the call queue. We've got people who are typing their questions, and I'll read some of those out loud. We've also got people who've raised their hand, and I'm going to call now on Lamont Mitchell. I've made your line live. You now need to unmute yourself, and you can ask your question.
Thank you. Mayor, let me just say this is a very difficult time for the city, but I certainly enjoy the leadership that you have brought in working with what is as opposed to what could be. My major concern is that illegal guns coming into the city, particularly from states that have very flexible laws as it relates to gun purchases, and how are the ATF working with the FBI to track down these guns? I know for a fact that guns are being purchased in red states and being sold to our youth in Washington as protection for themselves. They think they need a gun at 14 because everybody else got a gun at 15. And I didn't hear anything that he talked about going and making sure illegal gun purchases and sales are eradicated in DC. We don't have gun shops in DC. The guns have to be coming from somewhere, and they're given to our children who think they need them for protection, and it's causing a lot of heartache and headache. And
okay. I got it. That's a good question. Now, in my meeting with the Attorney General today, we had a big focus on guns, illegal guns, using guns in the commission of crime, and that will be a focus area for enforcement. You are right to suggest that once we have recovered those guns, that we should be tracing them and finding out where they come from and what other crimes they could have been involved in. So we'll keep that on the forefront.
Thank you. Our next question, David, I tried to unmute you. Can you speak and see if we can hear you, David Rubenstein? If not, I'll read your question out loud. I'll read the question. How do you envision federal resources helping to support policing in nightlife districts, which still generate a great deal of issues?
I expect, and I can also ask Deputy Mayor Pia to jump in. And when we are thinking about, when the chief of police is thinking about where additional federal forces would go. Now, keep in mind, she's approaching this in a similar way. Just imagine if we had the number of MPD police officers that we should have, if we were at 3,800 instead of 3,100 and some. So she is approaching her deployment strategy with some nuance to see how the additional federal police officers can help in some areas. She has some special focus areas, homicide reduction in some neighborhoods where we have a lot of gun activity and a lot of homicide. And also in areas where we have seen robbery, areas that are drug enforcement zones that she identifies periodically, juvenile curfew enforcement zones, as well as nightlife areas. So we expect that when there are additional federal resources available, that they will be deployed in our high priority areas, which include our nightlife areas.
And so for those who aren't aware, I see Jean Homa on here, so knows that every Friday, Saturday, and many Sunday nights, we actually have a multi-agency effort in our nightlife corridors, each street, but with particular focus on U Street and the Golden Triangle, where we see many people out enjoying our nightlife areas. And so as the mayor said, a focus for the chief is really, we've focused on presence. And certainly what this surge, the federal surge of officers will allow us to do is to add presence in those areas where we know that there are significant people out and about in the overnight hours particularly, which is what much of the focus of the federal law enforcement officers will be, is really supporting a lot of the overnight efforts. So that will allow the chief to really enhance the efforts that we've had with both MPD and then, many of you know DPW, DDOT, many of our other enforcement agencies that participate in helping us to try and have order in our nightlife areas.
Thank you. Our next question is going to come from the phone. So Linda, I'm major line live. Linda in Ward 4, if you can speak, we can hear you. Linda, can we? If not, we're going to come back to Linda because I think I heard we need to make another move here. So we're going to move to Marquita Bryant in Ward 8.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for all you're doing for our city, for your leadership. I do have a question and concerns. I have parents who have reached out. We have started the conversation. They are worried the school year is getting ready to start. Youth are nervous. Do they walk with their parents? How would this look when the first day of school happened? We have a lot of seniors who are also asking that same question when they go out on their walks and strolls. How do we make this less intimidating? I know it will be a presence, but I guess parents and school children who will be traveling to and from school, and also seniors who walk about the community, they do want to know how can we make this a more environment where it is still DC, but also is collaborated.
Can you give us some ideas about what you think would be appropriate?
Yes. So for the young school children going to school, again, everyone wants safe passage going to and from school. But I guess in front of the schools, traveling to and from on the metro, you have a lot of youth who are trying to do something good with their lives. They want to get to and from school and not feel as though if they travel in groups, because they do that for safety, will I be looked at upon as something else. Also, we have young school children. Will we have guards or officers at law enforcement with their vests right in front of the school buildings, and it become intimidating to travel to and from school? Also, we have seniors who have lived different eras, and this is kind of triggering for them. So they want to stay inside, and we know we want them outdoors and still living their lives and have a quality of life. So yeah, that's what I want.
So I have been thinking about like the first day of school, the first week of school, as we always do. We are gearing up with our own safe passage workers. We're gearing up with our Transportation Connect programs because candidly, we have parents who are worried about their kids going back and forth to school. So I want to challenge my team and the chief to think about how we have presence without being intimidating. And MPD and school resource officers are in and around schools, working with the safe passage workers. We have safe passage workers in vests. So, and we have our DDOT staff who is out there who will be helping with crossing as well. So let me think about ways that we want or don't want any of the federal surge officers to be supporting at that time. So we are thinking about it. I don't know that I have the answer right now, but it is on our mind.
And Mayor, if I could just add in response to the question, I do know Chief Smith is trying whenever possible to have our MPD officers present when there are other federal officers who are supplementing where we are in neighborhoods. Our MPD officers know the community, know the families, often know the kids. And that is one way to your question about how do people not be perceived differently, is making sure our MPD officers are also present. The largest part of the surge will happen on overnight. So certainly in the school hours, it shouldn't overlap. And we're trying to be thoughtful with the guard deployment. You'd mentioned that as well. And having that predominantly focused on where we have the federal monuments, where in past special events, people may be accustomed to seeing the guard. So we're trying very hard to be mindful to the extent we can of having our local MPD be present and being able to mitigate some of the legitimate concerns that you raised.
And one of the things that I would say too is because what I hear often as we're planning now is that people want to see more MPD near schools. And so our hope, and I know that what the chief and her team are working on is, as the mayor said, is really how can we deploy the federal law enforcement in a way that helps us to drive down violent crime and really allows us in some respects to deploy MPD in the spaces where our people want to see them more, right? And so one of those is on things like routes to school. So as we're working on our safe passage planning, which we work together with MPD to make sure that we have as much coverage as possible, because that's usually what we hear kind of most from people, that it's in a way that feels safe and supportive for everybody.
Thank you. We'll take another written question. And there are several questions that are about schools, and so I'll just combine them all into one. And the question is, with start of schools about 2 weeks away, is there anything special that the school system or parents should do in light of the current surge?
I think yes. And so I am going to convene a meeting with our public education officials. During the spike in crime that we experienced in 23, I began a regular meeting with school principals, especially of middle and high schools, where we could have a direct and frank discussion about what the schools need from us. And I know that Chancellor Farabee will be meeting with all teachers and all principals in the coming week. And so we will have as much information as we can prepared for them so that they can share that information with parents. Likely, and I don't want to get ahead of the chancellor, but likely the chancellor will produce a communication for parents and families and for in a way to talk to teachers about how to talk to their students when they have questions.
Great, thank you. And as a reminder, everyone in the call, if you press 0, we'll try to get you into the queue. The next live question will come from Rodney Foxworth. You can go ahead. We've got your line unmuted.
Hi, Mayor Bowser. Thanks again for doing this. This is really timely. Just have two quick questions. I know 1 or 2 days ago you talked about if the feds want to help, they can provide additional funding for judges and prosecutors. Were there any comments from the feds regarding that? And should I ask the second question now or wait for you to answer the first one?
Go ahead with your second question.
So the second question, and I'm hearing this from a lot of folks in the Lamont Riggs community where I live. Does DPR park rangers currently provide security services to the areas around our rec centers throughout the day and night? And not, can your team consider that?
I don't know if I know the answer to their deployment. I know that they are on call. And I'm assuming that they have some patrols around Parks property. I would have to get back to you, Rodney, on the frequency, and specifically on the frequency around Riggs Lamont. On the issue of judges, we had a lengthy conversation with the Attorney General about judges. It's not the first time. We have had many conversations about judges. It is a big deal, especially if they expect to see increased arrest in the city. You have to have the judges to deal with it. And we have a backlog of about 15. Only the president appoints judges or nominates judges for the DC Superior Court and the Court of Appeals. His team has a long list of qualified people that have been submitted by our Judicial Nomination Commission. They are aware of the issue. The Senate is aware of the issue because they have to do the confirmations. And we're getting a focus on that. On prosecutors, we actually have to continue to circle back with the Attorney General on that because we believe that they need to detail prosecutors from other U.S. attorneys' offices because their level of vacancy is so big. I think they're trying to fill 60 prosecutors. Earlier in the year, a number of prosecutors were fired, and they have to backfill for those positions, and they have to do it quickly. So the funding issue, however, that is most significant is the congressional limitation on our FY25 spending that was about $1 billion. That affected services across all of our clusters that we had to eliminate in order to balance our budget. So there is still time for the Congress to fix that. And as far as advocacy goes from the community, that should continue to be in your talking point. I hate the word talking points, the words talking points, but that should continue to be a part of your narrative. Cutting $1 billion does not make DC safer. In fact, it has prevented us from being able to negotiate with our firefighters who are due for a new contract. Our police officers have to wait to get their raise until the new fiscal year begins because our funds were cut in the current one in FY25. So it's had a lot of impact. So I would continue to talk about that. I would continue to talk about the need for the president to appoint judges. And I would continue to talk about this as an intrusion on our autonomy.
Thank you. And just scanning the Q&A again, Mayor, there's several questions about homeless encampments and the unhoused residents, and if that will present either a burden to the DC system or if we know where some of the residents will be relocated.
Listen, we are very worried about this issue. I know from many conversations with President Trump that this is like his issue. Seeing homeless encampments, I don't know, it just triggers something in him that has him believing that our very beautiful city is dirty, which it is not. And so I worry about this because we spend a lot of time and resources trying to get the people who are in encampments into shelter. And they present with a lot of issues that make them not want to go into shelter. But Kevin, do you have kind of can you share like a rundown of our outreach experience about how many people we think we're talking about?
Sure. Let me provide some context, and then I'll talk about what we're doing literally today and tomorrow. So, as context, the city has less homelessness than it did last year. So, we've seen improvements in homelessness, which we do through an annual point-in-time count survey. Encampments is one part of homelessness that is often the most visible, and that's really defined as when you literally have two people that are in the similar space or same space overnight. We call it an encampment. There's usually a tent structure. Sometimes there's not a tent structure. And our attention and focus on encampments predates this administration. So about 3 years ago, we began a protocol really focused on providing housing for those in encampments that often suffer, have more frequently from mental health issues, from substance abuse issues. So they have pretty unique needs and intensive needs. We also started housing programs really designed for folks in encampments that would provide services on site where we have housing. And since we started that about 3 years ago, we did a census when we started. We had about 300 people in tents and about 300 tents themselves. Sometimes people have more than one tent. About 4 months ago is our last time we did a survey. We had fewer than 100 tents and about 100 people that were in encampments. So we know we've made a difference, and those efforts predate the administration. Now, we also don't want to be naive about the president's interest in this and the use of federal law enforcement. So over this past weekend into today, our Department of Human Services outreach workers, as well as members that work in our Office of the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, have been doing direct outreach to homeless encampments. And we really use the DC employee caseworkers that know the individuals well, that have relationships that predate right now. And they go and they talk about the need for to go into shelter and the possibility that federal law enforcement will be focused on encampments. We have made available in the past few days additional shelter capacity, so we know we have beds to offer people. If that shelter capacity gets used, we have the ability to expand it further. We also have going online and literally getting the certificate of occupancy this week, an entire building that can house about 200 people that is on E Street near North Capitol Street. And this is a building that will be dedicated to having services on site that will provide really humane housing that gives an opportunity for folks in encampments ability to be able to leave the encampment. But today, and I was out there briefly with them, our folks are going encampment to encampment, tent to tent, to talk to every single person to make sure they make connections and they make people aware of how to get services. And that will continue throughout this week and into next week with a greater level of urgency.
Thank you. Next question I'm going to take from Mr. Eric Weaver. You can go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, Mayor and the rest of the team. Just wanted to, so I know I heard you say you was going to plan a meeting with the people doing the violence prevention and stuff. My main concern right now is, a lot of times the violence prevention guys, they're out in the street, and if you don't know who they are, it can look like they loitering or maybe engaging in something they not, but they out there keeping their eyes and ears on the street and they engaging with the community. So just want to know, is it a plan in place to I know Kevin, you mentioned that they will be out there sometimes with MPD who knows a lot of the violence prevention workers, but just from the federal people not knowing who they are and seeing them out there and looking like they doing something they not doing. And so is it a plan to explain to them what the violence prevention workers are out there in the community doing and what that looks like? So, it's a safe place for them to continue on doing their work.
That's a great point. And Lindsay will work with our one's office and the Attorney General's office to convene a call like this with our violence interrupters. And I should have mentioned earlier that Chief Smith has secured the agreement from federal partners that they will wear identifying clothing, a vest, jacket, shirt, badge, so that members of the community know that they are law enforcement. Similarly, we want to work with all of our teams, the Safe Passage, Violence Interrupters, to similarly wear identifying clothing. And so, Eric, let's talk more and make sure we're all doing that, and that we can get down into the details on our call.
Thank you. Our next question is from Poet Taylor. You can go ahead. Your line is unmuted. Poet, can you hear us? If not, our next question is from Bishop Gray.
I did. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes.
Apologies for that. Thank you, everybody, for your time this evening. I have two questions. One, as a DC resident myself, a lot of us are experiencing a lot of stress, trauma, and burnout from everything that's happening. So is there anything that the city is doing to increase access to mental health support for both residents, our violence interrupters, and even our first responders? And then my second is, I know a lot of us are very concerned about safety. Over the weekend, I was in a neighborhood, and it almost felt like they were doing jump outs and stop and frisks. So when it comes to fairness in policing, what are we doing to make sure communities, how do I want to word this? How is the city working to protect communities while ensuring that trust and accountability also remain the center? Like, will we have a number where we can call if we see something and it's shady? I've had several people that have been kind of unfortunately locked up because they didn't know where they could smoke or engage in something. Like, there just seems to be a lot of those wires. So I guess those are my questions. Like, where will we go to get the resources that are always discussed? Thank you again.
So I think as we develop our kind of know your rights, let us find like a clearinghouse for information and also to report any concerns. Obviously, MPD concerns can be reported to the police complaints line and to any of us and the chief of police. And I'm going to ask the chief of police to maybe, or Lindsay, can you help us think through this? If there is a email that we can send specific information to, so that we can be responsive. And in the information piece that we'll put up, Poet, we will make sure we highlight where people can have access to services,
Doctor be in that room over there.
including the
That
VAD
room.
services that we medical services that we offer. All of our employees have access to an employee assistance program as well.
Thank you. There are a couple of other written questions that all have the same theme. It's about the faith community. And so, Mayor, the question is, how can the faith community help during this space where folks feel like they're being in receivership?
I don't know what does that mean?
I think the gist of his question is, how can the faith community help support and protect the community right now?
Well, I think the faith community knows best what they can do in the community that they're in. I don't know that I have everybody does this thing, but if you're in a community where young people need a safe place, do that. If you're in a community where moms need support, do that. If you're in a community where the violence interrupters can have a rest place, then do that. If you have a wide network where you can talk about the democracy issues facing the district, the intrusion on our autonomy, the impact on other cities, then do that. But what you shouldn't do is wait for me to tell you what to do. This is a time where community needs to jump in. And we all need to do what we can in our space, in our lane, to protect our city, and to protect our autonomy, to protect our home rule, and get to the other side of this guy and make sure we elect a Democratic House so that we have a backstop to this authoritarian push.
Can I add one thing, Mayor? Just, so one of the things that, so many who know me, I have a Christian faith system. The Bible says seek peace and pursue it. And oftentimes, you know, we talk about violence interrupters and all these various government things, but where churches really can help is you are peacemakers. And I just heard Miss Taylor talk about the anxiety and stress people are feeling and where can they go to get resources. And we said, we'll put out a list of government resources. But as churches in communities, this is, if ever there was a time for you all to throw open the doors of the churches. I saw from Dion Bussy Reader, well, we were talking about where can kids go that they can feel safe. Well, while your churches and you all, many are the people who can be in community walking, who can be opening the doors of your churches now. So as places of peace. And also, I think you can be tone setters, that there are many things that, can be frightening to people, but I offer that oftentimes, you know, in our talks about community policing with MPD, that as you engage positively with law enforcement, they engage with you as well. And I would posit maybe there is some of those things that you as faith leaders in communities who believe you have the perfect protection of the Lord can help to be bridge builders with some of these federal law enforcement folks who some are from DC or regularly serve here. And so helping them to understand the communities where they are currently, like you can really be a large part of that and helping to really bring peace into a situation where we know a lot of people feel anxiety and you are the peacemakers and the peace bringers. So we could certainly use some of that support and prayer, always prayer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Will Crane, your line is unmuted.
Hi, Madam Mayor. This is Will Crane with Foggy Bottom Association, ANC 2A. I appreciate you organizing this event so quickly, and a shout out to the EOM for getting us all connected. I think my question relates to the homeless encampments and engagement through DMHHS, and I appreciate what the city administrator was saying, that the last count was 4 months ago. Foggy Bottom is in a unique situation. We're kind of tucked in between State Department, the Institute of Peace. We have a lot of highways traversing. And I think that a lot of federal officials go through our area and see this and take that to be indicative of the city as a whole. I know that myself, several community members have been reaching out to DMHHS, trying to get the word out about the spike in homeless encampments in our area and trying to get some engagement and information. And I've had no luck over the course of the last 7 days to get any response from them. So perhaps if the city administrator could reach out and engage civic associations, I think that those of us that live and work and experience this neighborhood every day could be a resource. So that's not really a question, but I appreciate it all the same.
No, it's very helpful. And as Kevin mentioned, we are focused on really getting people to come into shelter, as we always are, but with some intensity, because we can't say for certain what the federal approach is. And we do know what our approach is. And so we really want people to come into shelter. So we've made available more shelter space, and what we're seeing as a very successful so far bridge program. We'll be able to add another building in the coming days. So that's also good news for our capacity.
Mayor, if I could just add, and for the caller, let's make sure we definitely connect after this. I want to make sure we are empowering you with all the information you need. You're right that there is, in terms of visibility to the federal buildings, your area is particularly prominent. It also just has more encampments in that area. So it's why we start at the Aston, our first building that really is dedicated to having services on site in your community. We expanded capacity recently at that building. In addition to that, over the weekend, as I mentioned, we got additional bed capacity. The encampments in that area were a particular focus throughout today. I mentioned I was out for some time with the deputy mayor's team. It was actually, we were in one of the encampments that you're referencing. And the folks that were engaging were individuals that are part of DC government, who know them by name, who the homeless residents also know by name back. And they're both encouraging and offering services for shelter that we've made available. We also offer services through Department of Human Services called Project Reconnect that allows for someone who's homeless to reconnect with someone that may be able to provide them with shelter or a bed that's known to them, a friend, a family member. And at the same time, we're going person by person, really informing them, sometimes somewhat bluntly, about the space we're in right now. And that message is coming from a trusted voice, so that we make sure we're giving them all the information that we have at our disposal about what's happening now, as well as the opportunities to get shelter. So let's make sure we connect after this. And I appreciate your attention and engagement on the issue.
Thank you, CA. Our next question is going to go to Terry Goins.
Good evening, Mayor Bowser and your staff. Praise God for how y'all been conducting yourself and carrying yourself during this time. I guess it's more of a comment more than a question. Do y'all think that this is a good time? I know when I was going to school, they had this course called DC Government. I believe that if we educate our kids about DC government, how DC government operates, they will best understand this situation if it was to arise again, or even to help us becoming a state, So that's one of the things I want to talk about.
Okay. And yes, I think that all manner of civic education, formal in our schools, and I also think that there's a role that community can play in teaching kids the history, making sure they understand why we need to become the 51st state, why they need to vote, and why they need to participate in civic life is a very important lesson. So let's figure out how we can support some community activities to get that done.
Thank you. Our next question is going to come from Shirley Smith. Go ahead, your line is unmuted.
From Ward 5. Mayor, we've always been supportive, and this is the time for the citizens to support you. It is our city, you are our leader, and the fact is I like what you're doing today, but you have got to keep us informed. However, whoever is the police department, whoever it is, I've got to talk to the citizens so we can tell our community. Like kids going back to school, we used to have a block thing where if you were going to school, everybody in the block was watch children go to school and make sure when they come home, if their parents at work, they could come home safely. So we're gonna have to go back and look after each other and pay attention. This man has given us an opportunity with his evil kind of way of thinking, has given us an opportunity to go back and be the kind of citizens that we should be to each other. We've always been in our community. So thank you for today's meeting. And whatever we can do, we're more than willing to help you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Shirley. Thank you.
Sorry, the next question is going to come from Emily Lucio. Go ahead, your line is unmuted.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Bowser.
Thank you.
My question is more specifically related to what you've heard from Attorney General Pam Bondi in terms of her plans to deploy the National Guard. We have various areas of the city, and some have obviously more crime than others. The Navy Yard has more crime than, maybe perhaps Cleveland Park or other areas. And so I'm just curious if you have any more specifics from the Attorney General or from the White House in terms of where specifically they plan to deploy the National Guard.
My expectation, though it can change, is that they will deploy the guard on federal properties. That includes parks, monuments, federal buildings. My expectation for the higher incident areas that you mentioned would be for where the federal surge officers would go. So they're law enforcement officers, not National Guard.
Thank you. And again, everyone on the phone, if you press 0, we can load you into the queue. I'm going to go to another written question. And there's several questions that are asking about the cost and if there are any cost of the surge that are be laid to the district, especially in light of the $1 billion that the Congress is holding from district resources.
I'm gonna say no, but we will, as we always do, be focusing on our homeless outreach. We'll be focused on our clean and safe activities that are DPW related. I will say that the DC National Guard, though not our guard, we coordinate tightly with them and they're not funded for this. So they're going to have to get federal funding. And it has not been confirmed to me that has happened yet.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Bishop Gray, you had a question earlier. We tried to get you. You're back on now.
No, I'm sorry. I'm good with my question. I think it was answered. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you, Mayor.
Jimmy Williams.
You have a question for you, Secretary?
Yes, my question is about protections for out-of-school youth ages 18 to 24, and also non-English speaking immigrants, two target groups that I think are most likely to have some kind of incursion with this current state. So I'm asking, how can nonprofits and others work best to help protect these groups, educate them, and ensure that they know how to act accordingly, comply, as well as protect themselves?
Well, we fund a number of groups in this space. All of our victim services groups have district funding, and they're like well-respected nonprofits throughout the city. All of our immigrant legal services grantees are funded to talk to people about their rights right now, and they have been actively working in this space for months.
I would also note, Mayor, like I was thinking about access to justice in this instance, that the district funds very significant amounts of legal services through access to justice, and that encompasses a whole range of legal nonprofits. So to the extent you're talking about kind of the gamut of need for legal information or services, the access to justice through the DC Bar is a place where people can get a lot of information and services funded by the government.
Thank you. Next question is from Charles Lockett. You can go ahead. Your line's unmuted.
Okay. Mayor Bowser, Charles Lockett, North Michigan Park. How are you today?
Well, thank you.
Okay. A question, not a question. Just the other day when this went down, I have two grandsons. One you took a picture with at Faith United. And when they left to go out to work that morning, one worked for you, other one does a summer program. I literally had to give them something I never thought I'd have to say to them. If you are encountered with these individuals, the law enforcement, stop the car, put your hands up, let the window down, and let them do their job. And kind of, it bothers me to know that there are other Black gentlemen, young men out there, who will probably come with that same encounter. My worry is that an accident, something accidentally happened, and it throw the city into chaos because of something crazy like that. That's all. Thank you.
And I appreciate that sentiment. And I know those types of conversations happen all the time in our households, making sure that our young people know how to respond to lawful law enforcement orders. and that they know how to come home. And I think that we still have to have those conversations even more intensely, because there is an expectation, I think, that a lot of stops will happen. And so that would remain the area that I have a lot of concern about. People, law enforcement that aren't used to making stops. And what we want all of, like I said at the top of this, everybody is expected to follow the law, and the police are expected to police in a constitutional way, whether they're our police or federal police. So I would continue to have those conversations with young people, especially, who may, sometimes we think that they understand. They may not understand. They watch a lot of TV. They're on these social media apps. They just may not understand the severity of the situation we're in. And then I'll also just mention, because we've talked about kids a lot and making sure kids know their rights. But you've heard me talk about youth a lot in the last several months. Especially youth who are participating in really disruptive behavior with these kind of youth takeovers. Some of them are our kids. Some of them are coming across the region to descend on places like the Navy Yard. So parents need to really, this is not the first time you've heard me say this, but you really need to know where your kids are. I think we have some really, kids that are not criminals, but they are getting together in big groups and causing some really, they're causing destruction. And so this is the type of thing that makes for good TV. All right. And to be candid, that's part of the motivation, I think, is to get some good TV and arrest in DC. So don't let your kids be a part of that. Like, know where your kids are and make sure they're not grouping together, because they will be a target.
Thank you. One more live question and one more written question. So the next question is going to come from Tony Lewis.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Madam Mayor. We really appreciate your leadership in this moment. Hey, Steve. Hey, Lindsay. Kev, I like your haircut. So I'm gonna be real quick. As it relates to what you just stated, Madam Mayor, is there any hopes to modify some of the programming out of like DPR, DOES, WANS, DHS, DBH, MORCA, or any of the agencies, or even if it's not necessarily modifications, but to be more direct in marketing of the programming that exists? Because I think in this moment, as we're requesting our residents and cautioning them what to not to do, I think it would be also great to accompany that with things that they can do. And we want to be helpful. And I know I speak for, the community in general, in any way that you can use us to share that information. Please, encourage the agencies to share the information with us so that we can get it to, the community.
Okay. Absolutely. And we're open to ideas, Tony. And so we don't want to fund these programs, staff these programs, promote these programs if they're not connecting. So give us some ideas about what you think would be better. I will tell you one thing that we did this summer. To your point, we put in a juvenile curfew. We created late night hypes across the city. We made Banneker Field open and available and safe for kids as another kind of convening place. We're mostly satisfied with how those came out. And we put a lot of money and attention on making sure that they were engaging for young people. So we will try new things, and we look to the community to help us figure those things out. But we're funding a lot of programs that are meant to draw people in. Some of it is for recreation and engagement, Other programs are for job training. Others are for mental health support. Others are subsidized employment. So we have a lot of programming that we are offering. But if the right people aren't connecting to it, that's a problem. So we know our violence interrupter network is helpful. Our safe passage is helpful at connecting, especially individuals that we know are at risk for being recruited into violence. We want to get them into one of these programs.
And Mayor, I'll just add, and I do appreciate, Tony, you often give a suggestion in the form of a question. So I always appreciate when you do that. We've talked about the beginning of school, and uh, the mayor mentioned we have robust funding for programs we want to make sure connect to people. This is also the time when a lot of programs transition to a new cycle. So after school programs start anew in a few weeks. DPR programs start anew in a few weeks. Even some of the adult job training programs honestly have some of the same cycle of having a fall, spring opportunity. So I appreciate the raising the suggestion between the adult job programs that are at our schools, our rec centers that our nonprofits do. I think it's a good challenge to make sure they are fully booked, they're fully connected to both young people and adults. And this is really the window of time to make that transition because come early September, a lot of them will start up again. And it's a good time to be able to focus on it.
Okay. Thanks for that, Tony. And I just have one more request of everybody, because I know one thing that has everybody pretty mad, especially me, is the characterization of our city and our residents. And we have a beautiful city. We have 700,000 proud Americans who call DC home. And while we're not without our challenges, we take care of our own business and we take care of our own people. So I think sharing your DC story, whether it's on your social media, with colleagues, is important. That we're telling people we don't live in a dirty city. We are not 700,000 scumbags and punks. And we don't have neighborhoods that should be bulldozed. So like we have to be clear about our story, who we are, and what we want for our city. So please get out there and share and reach out to us with any information, any concerns and recommendations like we've heard today. And so I just want to kind of be clear with everybody that I have a very my jobs are many right now, and part of it is just practically managing us through this crisis. But I'm also really ticked off about the intrusion on the district's autonomy and the characterization of the good work that we do in this city to make it beautiful, to have excellent services, to attract millions of tourists, to have a growing school system, to have a growing city with new residents showing up every day. So that's the real Washington, and I'm counting on you to make sure the world knows that as well. All right. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. If you have additional questions, feel free to email us at eom@dc.gov. Thank you very much.
Okay.